Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello to all you freedom lovers out there.
Definitely. All right, so I'm reinstituting something we did for a long time, which is pick off what day it is recognized nationally through that National Days calendar. So today is National Cherries Jubilee Day.
What is that?
You know this whole thing. I remember when we were doing this, when I did this before, I looked into this, and you apply to make your thing, whatever the product is, you apply to make this thing, as part of the national list. So you can actually have several of them. If they accept it, you got to pay a fee and all kind of go through this rigmarole. So this is a paid thing. Okay. Somebody
Yeah.
paid, in essence, to get Terry's Jubilee promoted. And I guess
When I was on the Hill, like they would have National Hot Dog Day, and like Oscar Mayer would show up and give all the congressional people hot dogs.
Right. I mean, look. I mean, there's a lot of interesting marketing going on, right? We just had National Cheeseburger Day, and so the fast food restaurants all dive in and you know get you a cheeseburger. I think McDonald's gave you one for like a penny or something like that. I don't remember. So it's through the app. So there's all this marketing hype that goes along with this. But I'm trying to think. It's like, so have you had Cherry's Jubilee before?
No.
Yeah, I don't know that I've had that. Okay, so I mean, it's
I'm a little
basically
wary of cherries because on the inside of them there's a hard seed, right? If you
right.
bite into it, you have a chance of really giving your mouth a rocking time there.
Yeah, don't they probably do some seed spitting contest with cherry seeds because
Oh yeah.
but
Mhm.
those seeds are pretty little. They're very compact
Yeah.
and everything like that. Now I mean I don't know how real the maraschino cherries are because they're so sweetened and everything like that. But I got so used to as a kid getting the maraschino cherries, in floats or whatever
In
milkshake.
the little jar. Yeah.
Yeah, in a little jar. Yeah, just not great for my health, but doing it that way. But yeah, cherries jubilee. I mean, it's basically what it's flambéed cherries. They
Yeah.
use alcohol, and then they have ice cream.
Right.
So I mean, it's like what? I
You
mean, I
got to
like
try
ice
to eat
cream.
it before the ice cream melts and all that.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing for me. It's like if the ice cream melts, I'm fine because I'm a weirdo where I actually like my ice cream almost liquidy, and sometimes I like to almost drink it sometimes. It drives my wife crazy, if I let it go too long. But she understands after 40 years is that I don't know. I just have this weird habit where if you get me a thing, so like Sam's Club and Costco, I think Sam's Club they do frozen yogurt, which actually melts really, really quickly compared to ice
Yeah.
cream. So it won't take very long in the warm weather for that thing to break down. So you know, I'm fine with it. She'll turn to me. She goes, "Well, I guess this is the way you like it because it just gets softer and softer." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with this.
Yeah.
I'll eat it both."
I'm a softer. Yeah. I like the whipped. I don't like the
I
scoops.
and I love and I grew up eating a lot of soft serve ice cream, which I
Yeah.
really loved.
Yeah.
There was a place in Silver Spring where the Metro is now, just a little joint called Reindeer Ice Cream, and it was about as small as you could get. You'd line up, you'd walk in, you'd order and pay or whatever, collect your ice cream, and you'd walk out. There's no seating whatsoever. It was just a line. It's a little bit, well, I mean, Jimmy Cohn's is not enclosed right in Damascus, but
Right.
it's and they have outdoor seating, but it has a similar feel
Yeah.
in the sense, and it had a cult following too back in those days. So,
Yeah. I'd
but
be hitting Jimmy Cones now going up to Westminster. I know exactly where that one is.
yeah. Well, I mean, how long does Jimmy Cohn's just run during the summer, or do they stay
No, it's open.
open year round?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I just don't. Yeah, I need a reason to be there. It's like But
Right.
I took
You got to
it.
be going to Damascus. I'm not driving
Yeah.
there for ice cream.
Yeah.
I'm not Joe Biden, you know.
Yeah, I did that once with my wife, and we're like, yeah, only if we're in the area again will we do this, because it's just a drive,
Yeah.
to get up there and all that stuff. All right, so much for Cherry's Jubilee. We'll see what next week brings. News. There's plenty of news this week. I'm actually going to start off with Trump at the UN and and I'll go through the list, but uh, you know, I always have this mixed feelings about President Trump. But boy, I tell you, on the UN thing, spot on. I mean, he hit him hard, and rightfully so, and right on their home turf. I think a lot of people, a lot of people were squirming. There apparently was some people were laughing, but he just hit him hard.
Yeah. Yeah. He says things, that's one of his superpowers, is he says things other people aren't willing to say, and we all know them. They need to be said. It's not that they're not true or he's dreaming them up. It's that it's not considered politic to say them. But Trump's, he can't run again. He doesn't care. He's ready to get right. He's not trying to fool anybody anymore. He's just trying to run the country. And, he put a good message on them, and they should not have messed with his teleprompter, because you went from 15-minute speech, which they had written a 15-minute speech, because that's what you're supposed to do there. And he's talked for almost an hour because, you didn't have his notes. So, ha, 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 joke's on you.
Yeah, so, if you thought trying to sabotage, if that's what indeed it was, the teleprompter is like, you totally did the wrong thing.
Yeah, but the funniest part of this, and this is one of those things that like me and you will get because of what we do. I hope everybody else does too. But so AP puts out a story saying that a Trump person turned off the escalator and a Trump person screwed up the teleprompter, and it's all Trump's fault, based on one anonymous source. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So it's like, propaganda gonna propaganda, I guess.
Yeah, but I love these things that he was saying, at the UN. I mean, he just, in terms of going after that, he's, what is the purpose of the United Nations? Right?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I mean, what is the purpose of the United Nations?
Right. That's right. And we thought it was like to keep the peace, right? Help with peacekeeping, end wars, smooth stuff out, make it where people get it all together. But, Trump's point was like, we're going around actually dealing with these people and getting these wars stopped, right? It was like the Congo. I mean, that had been going on for almost 30 years, right? It's like just wanton killing, no Geneva Convention, nothing down there, killing civilians all over the place and whatnot, persecuting the churches. And they, he got them to stop, right? He's going into these things and he's getting people to stop fighting. And it's like, that is supposedly what they're doing. But, it's like any of these other things, it's mission creep, right? At first we're going to work out things between nations, right? We're going to give the nations a place to meet and avoid war, right? Basically. And then we're into food programs and sex programs and reproductive science and this and that and the other programs. That's not your job, right? Like their job was to keep the peace. So you had a lot of bracket creep there, and so what happens is like you have a big entity like that. No one knows exactly what it costs to supply food to Somalia for a month, right? They just give them a ton of money. And, maybe it takes a third of that. Maybe it takes a fourth. You can bet that it doesn't take more than that, or you'd hear back about that, right? So what happens to the rest of that money? It's like, we can see that people who were not the intended recipients of our largesse are getting rich off of it. So what do we do? And I think that's, a question that they're wrestling with, and rightly so.
Yeah. And then, climate change, he hit him hard there too.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's right.
All bankrupt, carbon footprint's a hoax. No more global warming, no more global cooling. Whatever the hell happens, it's climate change. I mean, he's right
about that. Like they changed the wording, because they wanted something that could explain whatever happened, right? Because there's no, you have to ask them, like, all these things. It's like the people who talk about the tariffs. What would have to happen before you would acknowledge that Trump was right about the tariffs? What would have to happen before you would acknowledge that, global warming is not the big crisis that these people all make it out to be? What data would confirm it for you? Because if it's not falsifiable, if you can't prove it wrong, it's not science, it's political.
Right. And I mean, this stuff, just how they're so politically, politicized on these things. I mean, for a long time it was, they were just fine with, with global warming, but that they then couldn't explain when we had cooler summers,
right,
or and things like that. Right. Just where the weather just has their variability. They couldn't. They wanted to blame everything, on this big mammoth thing that we have to do something because it's a threat, because otherwise we're all going to die, or we're going to wind up underwater and all these kinds of things. And so when those things don't come to pass, think about Al Gore and all his predictions, that you now get this kind of encompassing terminology of climate change, and then you can say, hey, okay, it's climate change. They don't, like President Trump's like, it doesn't have to be global warming. No global warming, no global cooling. It's climate change, because that fits their narrative, what they want to do.
Stretch that any way we need to. Yeah.
Right. They can throw all kinds of things into that nonsense. So I mean,
then you get a year like this where the temperatures certainly don't suggest global warming, right? It's been a very cool summer over most of the country. And he's right. And there's been one hurricane that stayed out to sea basically all summer long. It's like all the things that are supposed to be happening, increasingly severe, increasingly common, are not happening, because the weather's variable. I would say to the people who are still pushing that it's not, there are bigger forces. You're not the only one who doesn't understand it, right? I don't think anybody really understands it. Like how the earth corrects its temperature. What does the earth do? Like, the Mount Pinatubo, right, erupted a few years ago. I guess it's back in the 80s now. It's more than a few years ago, right? But then, the next 3 years were unduly cold all over the world because all that ash blocks sunlight, right? So what did the earth do? Did it stay unduly cold? No, it ramped back up a little bit, right? Why did it do that? How does it know to do that? How does it make that happen? We have some basic guesses, but we really don't know. And that's why, like, say, okay, we're going to attack the problem of it being too warm in the summer, which is kind of a dumb problem to attack. Anyway, you don't have the basis, and you don't know that the things you're planning to do about it won't make it worse.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just amazing to see what these guys do. And the UN is kind of at their things are getting kind of critical there, because the Trump administration has been withholding funds.
Right.
And and we supply a lot of money to the UN to
almost half the budget.
Yeah, so they're really hurting on this. But I mean, I think Trump is trying to make those points, like, what is the purpose of this organization? Why do the U.S. taxpayers need to fund this organization? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And as you have pointed out correctly, I mean, in terms of, they've just sprawled, right? Politically, they've done all these different things. I mean, I still think about even when I was a kid. I mean, when I was like 9 or 10 or whatever it was, and we used to get these little orange boxes at Halloween and had little points on, and you're supposed to collect for UNICEF when you go get your candy and stuff like that. And my father pretty much banned me from doing that. Okay, and this, I mean, this was over 50 years ago. I mean, he was
at it, man.
Yeah, he was like, don't do that. It was like, you're telling like this 8, 9, 10-year-old kid don't do this. All your classmates are going around with the orange boxes, and your dad is telling you no.
Yeah, that's
They're
right.
bad. Trying to explain to you why they're so, communist, socialist, whatever he was saying back in the time. He's like, don't do that. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's why I was brought up right, in that sense, is that he ingrained a lot of things on me at a very young age.
That's right. He is exactly right. So a lot of what they're doing is financing the university class, right? The teachers, the research. People realize, the speech that Eisenhower talks about the military-industrial complex. He also talks about the education government complex, right? Where they bounce money for research to confirm the things they want to do, and they discourage research that challenges the things they want to do. And it can be used as a political weapon just as much as anything else.
Yeah, and Bob being in academia, knows these things. I'm not against academic research, funded by the government for things that are, we've developed things as a result of our research, but this has become a cottage industry. I mean, it's just like the university.
It's a full-on industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, the universities now depend on this, right? I mean,
that's right.
This is a big part of their budget. They now, I guess I think that this is a right. This is that they deserve to have this money, and to get increases in their funding and to do all this stuff, and it's just ballooned, right? It's just expanded exponentially.
Right. There's another, if you give government money, you're going to get a mission creep, right? There's another mission creep,
right? And I mean, the university presidents and board of regents, I mean, they're not stupid. I mean, they know that the government has got a very large spigot. And once they get that open to their university, chances are they will continue to get more. They just get, they can concoct more studies, more things that they say, okay, hey, here's a research proposal, we think you ought to fund this to the tune of, I don't know, $10 million or 100, whatever it is. And the government likely is to go ahead and say, Trump is the first one to finally come in there and say, no, we need to take another look at this, because what are we getting for this? He's pounded higher education. I mean, I think he's used the anti-Semitism issue, to great effect, which has been able to give him some leverage in terms of shutting down, withholding funds until they get these colleges, universities a little more in alignment. This is not a one-time thing. I mean, this is a long process because of the huge amount of money that we, taxpayers put into all of this research. But I think it's a big step in the right direction of kind of reforming, how we do things. I mean, somebody needs, not all research yields something worthwhile. A lot of it is just, we want money.
Right. And on that topic, a lot of the research, the benefit is all commercial, right? It's the government doesn't get a whole lot out of it. So why are we funding their research?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's commercial. Right. I mean, there's, if commercial entities want to partner with universities for research, I think that's well and fine.
That's great. Yeah. Give them the money.
This is what I was looking for a little more too. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that I hadn't thought of initially when I was at AIM for a while. It's just that, when we would go out for grants and stuff like that, I didn't really think about, and I don't think the people who are writing the grants for me thought about the fact that, we should have a buffer for overhead, because it's not, we could figure out how much it would cost us to provide this service that we were trying to get this grant for. But what we rarely, if ever, did was actually calculate the overhead of implementing this and running the program. If we were allowed to do that, some places, we had that, they were like, it's straightforward. It's got to go for this, and you can't, you pay for everything else, but we're paying for the direct program. And so, but there's no reason, that you can't have some, and I was always, when we started doing any of that, I was always very conservative. But I don't think universities are conservative in that sense. It's like, this is money, as he was saying, development accounts that are often used by deans or faculty and quell potential rebellion in their ranks. Yeah.
So some taxpayer is paying money for some dean somewhere to dole out to his favorite professor, so the favorite professor doesn't leave over whatever. Right. So I guarantee you that the taxpayer is working hard, in his welding shop in North Carolina, does not want to hear about that. Right. That's not something that he feels that he should feel like he's supposed to be funding. Right. I mean, we're trying to protect our property. That's all government's supposed to do, is protect our property. And, you've got slush funds for college deans. That's not protecting my property.
Yeah, it's beginning to sound like.
Yeah, I bet.
Korea, the corporations in Korea are famous for having hidden slush funds. So they hide so many things in so many ways that
they have a lot of zipper problems over there, right? Basically,
yeah.
And so you got to pay people to be quiet, and whatnot.
Right. All right. We'll continue to move on. I mean, Trump also kind of did a 180 on Ukraine, and now he's really supporting the idea of look, get some land, and let Ukraine has got a chance. I think, it just continues to show he's fed up with Putin.
Yeah.
And
Putin made a mistake the last time. He pushed Trump too far. And now he's saying, I'm going to take we're going to get Ukraine all the way back to its original borders, which means you're going to have to dislodge some Russian troops that have been there 3 years or so. Okay. So when you go to attack those troops, you're going to have pretty fierce fighting, right? But if you bring more to the table in the way, battlefield resources than they do, you will win, assuming it's deployed correctly and whatnot, you will win. And then what do the Russians do? Right. Because you hold territory. You don't use your best people to do that. And you don't overcrowd that either. Right. They don't view it as taking a whole lot of people to hold territory, garrison duty or whatever. Okay. So, but that's not the case here. I mean, these guys are coming over the mountains, and how many of them, you might win some of them, but how many of them can you afford to lose? And then how do you replace those people? You got to remember, like, Putin is in the position now where when he dips into his bag to get more stuff, some of that stuff is not there. There's, it's like, it's hard to know where he can go to get a whole lot more people to fight this. If Ukraine escalates the fight, right, can Russia go get 100,000 soldiers to put against it? I don't know. Maybe they can, but I get the feeling they may not be able to. I've always thought, like, it's the least attractive in some ways approach for this. It's just to go all in on knocking Russia out of Ukraine. But I think we've reached the point where it's not. I think it's reached the point where it's a viable thing, because is Putin really going to nuke Ukraine, right, to win this? He might, but if he nukes Ukraine, right, that won't be us, right? But the response will come from us. So you'll get the same rain of nuclear weapons on your soil if you go against Ukraine as you do against the U.S. And I think he knows that, right? So, I think they have nuclear weapons. They could use them, but I think that that Putin feels checked off of that right now, that he can't do that.
Yeah, and I think just from practical purposes, it's like, you nuke a country because you want to take it over. There's like, well, you've now destroyed this country. It's like, now you got to deal with the fallout from the whole nuclear stuff. Is like,
right.
What are you getting?
Decades before you can use this country.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, I don't think that's not a super viable thing. I mean, it's a threat, but it's not a threat.
Where's the wind going to blow that nuclear ash?
Right. 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 Yeah. I mean, it's just, yeah, you know, and they only they're so close. I mean, in terms of, Putin. No, I think he better has to watch out if he pushes this thing too far. I mean, uh, if he doesn't really come to the table and negotiate something, that everybody can agree on, and now that Trump is now once again backing Zelensky, you know, it won't. I don't think it'll take a whole lot more before the NATO countries are like, they're going to be getting so we're fed up with this, and we are going to go ahead and do something we don't do, which is supply boots on the ground to kind of make the finishing push.
Yeah, once it starts to look winnable, you'll see all kind of people ready to act. Right now, it doesn't look winnable, but it would not take a whole lot of pressure to change that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. All right. Another thing too here, which is also we have some countries that are, was it Canada, France, the UK, they're all jumping on recognizing the Palestinian statehood kind of a thing. This is a bandwagon, to put pressure, trying to put pressure on Israel to end this war. And it seems to be that these guys think that by doing this, that Israel is going to somehow back off and want to and say, okay, we'll come to the table and we'll negotiate this without the elimination of Hamas. Not going to happen.
Well, they don't want, they don't want a two-state solution.
Right.
Who wants the two-state solution? Not the Pallies, not the Israelis, right? It's people outside of it, right, that are posturing for their home audiences or whatever, because it doesn't help the Pallies want from the river to the sea. They want to kill every Jew, drive them all out of Israel, right? That's not compatible with a two-state solution, right? They're not for that. They do not favor that. So I don't look for it to happen, because they would have to recognize Israel, and they would have to agree not to attack. And they would probably at this point have to agree to not be armed, right? To not control a lot of armaments, right? But those rules are easily circumvented, and foreign countries can get involved and so forth. If you ever set up a state there, I just don't see a lot of momentum behind that now. I think they're speaking to domestic audiences that the UK, Canada, they have very hostile sort of Arab communities within them that they're dealing with this stuff. And this is just quiet them down. I don't think it really has any consequence, because they can't do what they're purporting to do.
Yeah, and there are three countries that are in trouble, right? I mean, their governments are not doing well. So right. This is, I will try to appease you by saying we're going to do this because it looks like we are trying to be peacemakers. We want to get this done, et cetera, et cetera.
Thumb in Trump's eye,
Yeah, right. Poke Trump, and stuff like that. But it's something that it might come back to bite them for some others. I mean, these countries are, Macron. We've talked about that in the past. I mean, they're, he's just his whole government's just teetering.
Right.
Keir Starmer has found this to be a rougher go than anticipated.
Right.
Canada,
it looks like Farage was going to win the next election.
Yeah. As an aside, I don't know. So there was a funny article in the Journal about Farage because he also does the cameo video. So the cameo video, they have all those celebrities that that they set a price for. They'll wish you a happy birthday. They'll whatever you want. Yeah. You give them the details. George Santos famously did that. After he was booted out, he was raising some personal cash by doing cameo videos. But Farage apparently has become quite the celebrity. For $95, they're saying it's like he'll say anything. While he's still trying to run this UKIP party and the whole thing, and trying to all of these kinds of things. So I don't Farage has just been an interesting character, right? I mean,
is.
The British. I don't know.
The funniest thing, did you see, is he was up on the Hill. He was testified before the House, and he he made a joke of it. Like he didn't take it seriously. And so they're all like, he's smirking. Look at him smirk. And it's like, he doesn't care, right? You're not scaring this guy. He does this every day, right? Because House of Commons, like you get up to speak and people start yelling at you and stuff. I mean, it's just a different way it gets done. But nothing that goes on in our congressional hearings scares him, right? He's perfectly fine with it.
Yeah, I mean, watch videos of anything that you've ever seen of the House of Commons when they're there. I mean, it's a shout fest. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there. It's like you get to be kind of battle hardened as a result of that, right? because it's always people are always yelling at you, disputing what you're saying, and you have got to kind of raise your tone and level and get above all that so you can make your point. And so it's a constant thing. And
you learn to laugh at it, right? You cannot get angry and start screaming at them on the other side. You'll just be filleted, right? So you have to do it in a droll, humorous way, which he's very good at.
Right. You cannot let the opposition to whatever you're saying in the House of Commons get under your skin, and then and then where you start getting into what you were just saying, you just take it, and you go on, make your points, and you just kind of shrug it off, and you will be fine, because this is the way they operate and have operated forever, it seems. So it's just a unique way that some of these bodies operate is doing this. Some Americans might find this off-putting, but it works fine for their system. So they're not about to change that. If you don't have enough courage in your backbone, kind of a thing, then you're going to have a problem. The opposition will just run over you like a Mack truck. So you've got to have the courage over your convictions and stick to it, and not let them get under your skin, and just so you don't fall over. And Bob had another comment here based on our last topic.
Yeah, that's right. He's right. So there's drone attacks on.
Another one too. Okay, he did back to back here.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so we have a couple ones.
So what was the first one? Can you show them again?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Our tone did change with the drone attacks, because Trump realized that not only is Putin content to not do anything to make peace, he's actually up for starting more trouble. So Poland, that's an Article 5 country. We would all have to go to their defense if they were at war. So it's very close to mandatorily, so to speak, involving the U.S. So, Trump is saying, yeah, we'll come after you. I will, it's time to make you defend the whole of Russia, right? I thought that was a great approach. And, Putin's got to be over there scratching his head. What the heck is Trump meaning? What does he have in mind here? So, I think that like his little project just took a major turn for the worse.
Yeah. So thank you, Bob, for your comments. Switch now to Charlie Kirk. So the memorial service was on Sunday, right?
Right.
Huge turnout for Charlie Kirk. That stadium seats like 63,000.
And they had 17,000 on the floor.
Yeah.
Which adds to the seats,
Right. And it was first come, first serve. So you had to get lined up. I mean, people were lined up before dawn to get there. There's a guy that I knew from California that had gone there, and he reported, he just mentioned a couple of things. It's like, he says, well, they were in a car, and they were just thinking like, they're not sure they were actually going to make it there, because it was just such a massive backlog of cars trying to get just to even anywhere to get to park. So there was this huge outpouring from people who loved Charlie Kirk, who also wanted to probably see President Trump and a lot of the cabinet members as well speak there. It was a who's who of the conservative movement out there, mixed with a very Christian theme,
Yeah.
right? Which is also
Very
part of.
overtly Christian thing. That's right.
And so we saw a lot of that. And Erica Kirk, the widow, who's going to be taking over Turning Point USA, huge interest now in Turning Point USA. She was very kind and eloquent and just forgiving the shooter,
Right.
who took Charlie's life and robbed her of her husband and the father of their children. Doing that. President Trump being President Trump. I mean, it's just you never know. It's just like, I don't agree with this. Kind of like love your enemy. I hate my enemies.
That's right. That's right. But, I think as a juxtaposition to that, that wasn't all that bad what he said. I mean, I don't like to talk like that. I don't talk about hating people. I don't really hate the other side. I think they're dumb. They think we're evil. We think they're dumb. But I do think they're incurably dumb. It's just like how many times you have to be hit over the head with the same frying pan before you get it. But the point about that was there was a lot of outpouring, right? And there's 1,500 people trying to start Turning Point chapters in schools around the nation now. There was somebody, I guess somebody in Oklahoma, they always overdo it. The superintendent of schools in Oklahoma wants there to be a Turning Point chapter in every school. See, that's not right either, right? If that organically happens, good. But some schools are not right for a Turning Point chapter, right? And they shouldn't have to be it. Like it's convince people to be on your side, not force them, right? And that's what the left does, is force you. They don't give you any choice, right? Like, you have to join the union to work, right? The stuff like that. So don't be the side that's forced. Be the side that does what you do willingly.
Yeah, and I didn't realize, either until, I saw stories about it, in terms of high schools. I mean, I just had assumed that, when they had put these figures up, and because I didn't go behind the numbers, that they were just basically talking about colleges and universities, but they also are talking about, high schools. I mean, that's, Charlie's effect was really, I mean, he really hit a lot of age groups there, and really, the type of thing that, swings elections, right? I mean, he gets the youth behind him and behind Trump, and the young people that the Democrats thought that they might have had, Charlie Kirk turned a lot of these people and explained to them, why the conservative movement, why Donald Trump was the best choice, for those that could vote.
Yeah. And, like my son has kind of gone through this journey, right? He's 18 now. And, so like who is influencing the guys like Marty, 18-year-old kids who has their brain, right? And, like he told me a couple of years ago that he had been watching the Tates, right? Andrew Tate. And I'm like, well, we don't, we respect women here, right? We don't, they're not pieces of meat. They're not there for our use, right? They're people themselves. And he's like, oh yeah, that's right. That's true. And so, and now this is probably the news story that he's been the most curious about and looking for his own information on and so forth. As long as he's been around, right? That he's like, he's calling me, telling me things about it that I didn't know, right? So he's following it very closely, and he's looking for role models like that, and he is actively looking for a role model. He is seeking to be led, right? Which a lot of which is another thing that's kind of changing on these campuses is like, why do these people turn out for this stuff? To argue it or to support it, right? They're looking for a coherent set of principles that they can get behind, and they go on the internet and say, these are my principles, and people will not come up and say, you're ignorant, you're stupid, you don't know you didn't know these 4 facts that make your principal stupid, right? And so they're looking to be guided. They're looking for direction in those areas. And he was on that one. He was on Charlie Kirk. He's paying attention to this.
Yeah, and I saw this story, which I also is just that the Chicago Cubs player Matt Shaw. I mean, he got permission to skip a game and go attend. Now, I guess he also received an invitation from Erica Kirk, and so he's been a follower of Charlie Kirk. The Cubs. So I saw that the Mets broadcasters criticized him for doing that, but it did. From the Cubs' perspective, they're in the playoffs.
It's not vital, right?
The last few games of the season, it did. Should he miss a game? Is it going to make a difference for them? No.
Right.
So
it could. You don't want to get carried away on this.
Yeah,
but the Cubs are free to say yes or no there, and
right.
he abided by what they said.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say. I mean, so it's interesting to see that we're getting more sports figures being a little more outspoken about their views, particularly conservative views. I mean, you get people from all different parts of the sport now. Whether or not it's baseball, football, whatever. They seem to have found their voice a lot more than
right.
in the past.
Right, that's right. They don't get run down for it as much.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not saying that I don't really want politics as a part of sport. I mean, I had enough of that with Colin Kaepernick and all that other nonsense. They should. You're paid to play football or baseball or whatever. That's what you do. And if you have a political belief or religious belief, that's fine. That's your personal belief.
But it's like they're fighting over like what message to write in the end zone. I'm like, how about no message?
Yeah, right.
Because we're not really there for a message. We're there for football, right? Let football be football. Yeah, it's like they got to throw this in, and they got to make you either submit to it or defy it, right? Every time, every step of life, people want to make you submit to it or defy it. And it's like, there's no reason to submit or to defy this. This is just, don't talk to us about it. It's not important.
Right. All right. Next up, Jimmy Kimmel. So he was suspended last week. I guess it was the same day we did the show. And then he's back. He went back on the air last night. Though not all stations, because the Sinclair and Nexstar stations are still keeping him off, and they represent about 20% of the ABC affiliates. For doing that. Based on what I saw, I mean, he was apologetic, but he was also defiant, and he did call out Trump as a bully, and he had Robert De Niro calling out, Brendan Carr, for his remarks. Now, look, you and I we talked about this before too, about free speech. Jimmy Kimmel has a right to say that he wasn't saying to go out and, kill somebody and do all these things. I don't like what he said, but I think that the idea that you want to pull a broadcast license over what Jimmy Kimmel said was just a little too far. I mean, I think Ted Cruz was right, on this in terms of this. Carr was definitely trying to curry favor with Trump, but
what Carr said came after all this happened. That's not
right.
The timeline of this.
Well, I mean, they did, but I mean, he was saying, I think he wanted to make sure that he was in alignment with Trump and, the possibility of pulling a license. Then Trump goes out on Truth Social and says, that was very lucrative of me last time I sued ABC. I got
that's right. Give me more than $16 million.
That's not going to happen. Okay, you can go ahead and say that's not going to happen over this. Okay,
right, right. And Trump is not who is wronged by this, so he couldn't sue anyway.
Right, right.
How do you even get your name on the case? Yeah. So what he said was that don't let MAGA get away with saying this guy's not one of theirs. It's like, but he's not, right? And he's not. He's not one of ours. That he's a leftist guy. And when you said it, right? And then, you know, this is one of those things go viral, right? That MRC has a guy who stays up all night watching TV, right? You know, in case somebody says something like this. And he writes a thing, it posts at 9 o'clock. You know, it's on the late night talk shows that night, like The Five or whatever, right? And then the next day he's suspended. So it's like these things, you get this out there and people find out about it, you know, the circumstances change as people find out about it. So like a lot of Americans looked at that and said, okay, what he's saying there is wrong. And he knew it was wrong. And they're like, well, what did he really, you know, the left is like, what did he really say? Like what he really said was that, you know, don't let MAGA say this is not their boy, because it is their boy. Right. And, you know, you can't say, you know, when the evidence says otherwise, you can't say that. I don't blame, you know, I think when networks, when they have someone who is caught lying, you know, then that's the thing that really hurts them. Like, you know, Stephanopoulos was caught lying. So they just said, you know, how much money will get us out of this? Because, you know, you can't lie. You can't think you know something is right and say wrong on the air. It's not a rule. It's not a law. It's not a regulation. But if you do it, you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to me, though, too, is just, I mean, Kimmel's an entertainer. He's a liberal entertainer. I mean, and so you kind of know what you're going to get out of this guy. If he lies, he lies. I mean, I don't know how accountable you hold, you know, ABC for that. Threatening a license over that, I don't see that goes anywhere. I don't think you can pull a license for that. It's not egregious enough to warrant of that kind of action. So
I think what they're saying is it's not pull a license because of what Jimmy Kimmel said. It is pull a license because you're supposed to present both sides. If you have the public, you know, the public gives you a right to make a heck of a lot of money, right? But by controlling that spectrum space. And what they're saying is, if all you ever say is lies against the right and nothing against the left, you know, you're not doing what you promised to do to get your spectrum space. So, you know, I mean, I'm not sure that I would be for them actually banning them either. But you know, they're not on unsafe ground here. There are precedents for what they're saying.
Well, you know, we don't have a fairness doctrine. Okay, there's no equal time kind of a thing that goes on.
Right, that's right. And there shouldn't be. But you're given something that's a public trust, right? And so, you know, if you're going to keep the public trust, you got to do what you said you were going to do to earn it.
Right. I mean, that's part of the problem, I think, is just like the same thing with newspapers. It's just that the public in general thinks that these organizations are going to give them both sides of the story or the truth or something that's relatively unbiased. The problem is that we know that does not happen.
Right. So they don't come close to that.
Right. And they haven't for a long time. So as a result of that, you get these things that crop up, and yeah, you know, I don't, you know, you can't. I don't think you can pull a license for it. I think you can. I mean, I think if their license comes up for renewal, you can question the executives about it and whatnot. You know, I mean, look, Nexstar, you know, I mean, for them, it seems to be clearly tied to the fact that they're trying to, you know, they want to buy Tegna and they want to get this merger done, and they have already seen the climate under the Trump administration, and so he's like, well, let's be careful here with what happens, and it's better for us to say we're keeping them off the air for now, because we want to be able to try to see if we can't continue to get our merger through the pipeline that we need to get it through. And so, you know, Trump administration has already had this tremendous effect on how things are done. And, you know, Kimmel, you know, his contract, I think, is up next May. So he may not be there past next May or whatever. And that may be his decision. That may be Disney's decision, or maybe a mutual decision, you know, at this point in time. I don't know. I mean, I still remember Jimmy Kimmel, you know, from Win Ben Stein's Money program, you know, and he had a very minor role on that show, but he was funny as heck, you know, and, you know, it's like, he's made a tremendous career, made a lot of money, not my favorite guy. I don't watch, late night news, and there is something to be said for the fact that, just like with Stephen Colbert, liberals get all upset. Late night, talk, all that kind of stuff is dying.
Yeah, the franchise, the product itself is not really viable anymore.
No, it isn't. It isn't. So that's a financial aspect that that these networks are looking at too. Is that if Kimmel wants, I don't know how much he's getting paid.
16 million a year.
Yeah. So is that really Disney? Can Disney make money on that going forward?
Right.
In an environment where that whole product is dying, and people are doing more streaming and everything else.
One of the reasons it took so long to get out is because there were only 129,000 people watching.
Yeah,
the nationwide network free over-the-air show with 129,000 people.
Yeah, I mean, it's very different than the old Johnny Carson, David Letterman days.
Right.
All right, I got a comment here that I've been holding from Bob.
That's basically my thing is he
referring to anybody in particular?
It does kind of apply to this. Is if you're on the boss's microphone, then the boss makes the rules.
Yeah.
Right. And like Jimmy Kimmel's on the boss's microphone, so the boss does have the right to say, "Hey, Jimmy, I don't want you saying this, that, and the other." That's not censorship. That's between Jimmy and his boss.
All right. So we're rounding the corner here. So SCOTUS ruled in favor of Trump on being able to fire the FTC commissioner, Democrat. So her name was Rebecca Slaughter.
Yeah.
Now I mean, there's arguments I guess will be heard in December or thereabouts about. But in the meantime, they basically, the conservative majority said, yeah, you can go ahead and do this. Trump has definitely pushed the envelope on terms of trying to, change the makeup of a lot of these agencies where they had, appointments that were going to run 7 years, 14 years, 10 years, whatever they are, and had been separate from the purview of the president. It would take cause to get them fired, and getting these people fired is usually pretty rare. So
I'm uncomfortable with all those arrangements. Like to me, the ones where the term goes past the president's term, all those people should be people who work for that president and are committed to his agenda.
Yeah. Right? Well, I don't know. I mean,
why are we slowing that down? With these staggered terms and all that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't necessarily have a problem with elections have consequences. So if you've got a 5-member, commission, the party in power, gets 3, the party out of power gets 2. Okay. That's okay, because, you never know. I mean, maybe on a rare occasion, it'll go your way, even if you're not, if you're out of power. But, I mean, state of Maryland has that with their election commissions and stuff like that. It's like, you win the election for governor, you control all the election boards. But you get the majority vote. But you don't get all of them. You just get the chair. It's 2-2, and then you get the chair or whatever it is. So I don't have a real problem with that, because we see how that ebbs and flows, and it's just I don't see that that's been that's a huge deal one way or the other. All right, we got to keep rolling here. Government shutdown, 6 days left. Before this happens, the Democrats are still, standing, as obstructionists on a lot of these things. But I don't see how they want to get this done. They don't want to at least kick the can down the road. That this is not going to benefit the Democrats either if there's a shutdown.
Right. I don't think it helps them. It shows how feckless they are, because they're not even really part of the discussion. Right. Is there a Democrat proposal that we're turning down? Not really, right? One of the things that I'm watching on this is they're trying to bring back the NPR money as part of this. And so, there's some rumors that there's some Republicans who may help them on that. I hope that doesn't happen. I think we've killed a government program. It's surviving without our money. I think we should continue to let it survive without our money.
Yeah, the stations are raising money on their own at this point in
Yeah,
time, and some of them have done very well raising money on their own.
yeah,
At
good
this
for them.
point.
That's who
But what
should be paying for it, is their donors.
right? Yeah, we're not trying to run this government sponsored liberal enterprise here
Right.
and everything. All right, Harry Enten, CNN poll guru or whatever. So he had this poll up here. So the
Yeah.
economy, Republicans +7, immigration +13, crime +22. So I think he said the economy, the Republicans had dipped a little bit from the previous one, but they shot up on immigration and they were doing better on crime. So, we're still just a little over a year away from the midterms, but he basically said, whatever the Democrats are doing, it's not working.
Right. Well, they don't really. I mean, they don't really have a plan. Their plan on immigration is to let all these people stay here. Right. Their plan on crime is to, send social workers instead of police. Right. And what was the other one? The economy. The price of gas is coming down, and I'm telling you that is the biggest economic determinant in America, and has been for a long time. Price of gas is high. We're in bad trouble. Price of gas is low. We're in good shape. And you can see it coming down. Someone told me it's down in the 220s in Louisiana now.
So it's nice. Yeah, I mean, it's where I am. It's bounced around a little bit, but it's basically been relatively stable.
Yeah.
And I think people are fine generally when it's stable, and it kind of trending downward. Even if it pops a few cents, one day, but then comes back down after that, they're fine. They don't like people don't like volatility where they can't kind of plan and they can't kind of figure out. So many people that rely on their vehicles for their businesses and to get to work, commuting and stuff like that. But rising gas prices take a big bite out of their pocketbook, their checkbook, and so. The fact if it's at least stable, even if it's not as low as you'd want it to be, they can plan, and they can figure this out, and all this stuff. But yeah, so that's been that definitely is something that people definitely focus in on is, what's the price of gas? Probably more so than a lot of other things. So we'll see about that. All right, last couple of things here: Tylenol and autism. Okay, look. If my wife was pregnant and she had pain, I'm giving her Tylenol. I'm sorry. It's like RFK and his Maha movement. Sometimes I just think he goes a little bit too far on stuff. If this was such a bad deal, why don't we have a flood of autism cases? Because
we do.
Well, I mean. It's not like everybody who takes Tylenol, pregnant woman, has an autistic child. I mean, that's
right. It's not. But for some reason, the incidence of autism has gone from like 1 in 7,000 to 1 in 33 or whatever. Right. Something is going on there. Right. I mean, I think it's 1 in 33 is pretty close to what it is now. Right.
I don't know what the number is.
And so, that's basically, you think about, a classroom full of kids is usually 30 or so kids. So you're saying pretty much every classroom in America has one or close to it. And it's like that wasn't the case when I was in school. It wasn't the case when you were in school, right? And it's like, I guess we're better at diagnosing stuff, but there weren't that many people to diagnose at that point, right? It has changed. The numbers are growing dramatically. And if they think that Tylenol will reduce them. All he said was make it a last resort late in your pregnancy. Last 3 months of your pregnancy, find another way to kill pain, right? I don't think that's unreasonable or crazy. And it looks like they do have the science to support it. You got to remember, like, there's a lot of vested interest in protecting the status quo in this and what people think of Tylenol. If you do need it, if you do feel like you need it and the other stuff doesn't work, you should take it.
Yeah, so I'm looking and just decided for autism spectrum disorder, it says that the CDC said they estimated that 1 in 150 children had it in 2000, and it has increased to 1 in 31 for 2022. It's 1 in 131 for girls aged 8 years and 1 in 20 for boys aged 8 years. and then they list various reasons for the possibility of why, of how, how they've been able to, what's causing this. And a lot of this is they're saying right now is, just better, earlier detection, diagnosis, change reporting data. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot going on there. So yeah, so the numbers are there, but it's, I don't know. I mean, one in 31, that's not great versus 1 in 150, but it's not. I don't know. It's just it's not. I mean, I don't have a problem if you say there may be a link. You can say there's a possible link between acetaminophen and autism. And here are the proven studies. We've done 10 years worth of studies or something on, whatever. But we don't know. I mean, there's so many things in our lives we no longer know about anymore as to what's causing all these things. It's could it be our ultra high processed foods that people are eating that are leading to a multiple factor? I mean, we talk about that in cancer and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, we have seen an increase in a lot of things that they haven't been able to fully explain yet as to why that's going on. Why do so many young people have developing cancer now versus 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago?
Yeah, what relates to that vax, right? And they keep saying, the thing about the vax is, before the Myrna vaccine, before COVID, when you got a vaccine, the theory was we're going to give you the disease in a little bitty dose. So your body builds all the reaction to it. So if you ever actually get the disease, your body's ready to go, right? It's already stretched out, ready to fight that disease. Okay. So Myrna is not that. It reprograms genes. So that's why and like, how does it reprogram them? Heck, no one knows, right? There's no idea. That's why, I think something like I saw the other day, heart attacks are up 140% in like 40 and below. So I mean, there's something going on there too. The vax, that's not the right approach. Okay, we tried it, we rolled it out in a hurry. People were freaking out about dying of COVID and all this stuff, and so we gave them a vaccine. But on further review, that vaccine needs to be withheld. It's not working.
Yeah. I mean, I got the J&J vax, and that was it. So okay, that was my preventative measure, and that wasn't going any further.
I consider myself lucky that I got it in May of 2020. And, there was no vax. There was no choice. You just dealt with it, right? And, it was a bad 3 or 4 days. But then I had enough immunity to stand in the back of the line and watch what happened on all the rest.
Right. All right. Then finally, what I say is a wild card race. 5 games roughly left in the season for most of the teams. There's still a couple of undecided. Like the Detroit Tigers are collapsing. Your Astros did not have a good series against the Lori's Mariners.
Also collapsing, and then lost again last night.
Yeah, I mean,
Astros are like 15 under 500 since the All-Star break. I mean, it's just a collapse.
And they've had injuries. I mean, injuries play.
They've had injuries, and they can't hit in the clutch. And it seems like, every time we get to a key at bat in the game, some guy walks up there who's been in the majors for a week, and it's like they don't know what to do. That's not they're not ready for that. And so, we had a lot of pitchers who got hurt and they came back. But when hurt pitchers come back, it's a while before they're back to their former selves. So if you can hit, then you can allow them to be less than excellent while they recover, right? But we don't hit at all in the clutch at all. It's unbelievable. Usually this time of year, it's like there's something happens and you can tell the Mariners aren't going to be there. And I'm like, oh, the fading Mariners. That's my famous phrase from Lori, And but this year it's the fading Astros, right? She's getting ready to be a big team in the playoffs. And to me, you know, because I've watched this very closely because it involves my team. But that's a good team. I mean, they hit all up and down the lineup. They have good starting pitching. They're pretty good relief pitching. And, you know, they could go a long way. And I think on the other side, the Brewers are by far the best team in the National League.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see who makes it through this gauntlet, because they're good teams, but they're not necessarily powerhouse teams.
Yeah,
yet.
there's no 27 Yankees walking around this year at all.
Right.
So.
Right. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our varied conversation. Yeah, it didn't do too badly on time today. I was getting close. I'm still inching back to my goal, which I keep saying, I gotta do something. I keep tinkering with this, but I'm not successful. But I think it's been good. All right. Anyway, everybody, thanks for joining us. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. And we will see you again next week.